Okay, the third walkthrough I want to do is on part, the second extra credit one in 811. So 811 here. This is what our final part is going to look like. And if we go back to start, we can look at our part here. Now it has, since this is isometric and it's on the isometric graph paper, we do have all of the dimensions that we need for this part. So we want to make sure that we go in there, look at that closely so we can get the right dimensions. The second part is we need to start to think about how are we going to make this part? Well, it looks like we kind of have this bottom plate that has a given thickness to it and it has a hole in it. And then it has a side plate that has a given thickness that has a hole in it. So when I'm looking at this, I really see basically two different features. So I'm going to make one and then I'm going to make the other one. So in this case, I need to go through here, make sure I understand all of my dimensions. So this looks like it's about 8 by 8 and this is 5 by 3 by 3 by 5. So I can go in there and make my part. So now that I understand how the part looks, how I'm going to start to make it, let's go over to Inventor and start to create that part. So again, we're going to go up and do new part, and we're going to start. So 2D sketch, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch the bottom. Now, if I take a look at the bottom, this is, remember, from the left-hand side here, this is the front view. This is the side view. Looking from the top, that's the top view. So really I want to draw this sketch in the top view. So I'm going to go back over here. In the top view is this top one. So that's really this XY plane. Now the other thing that I really want to point out here is that we need to watch the coordinates here. So the Z is coming, it's kind of in this downward direction here. And the X is in this cross direction. And the one thing that I'll point out, when I click on this plane, and it rotates it around, we would typically think that kind of the in-out direction is going to be this way in the X direction, but in reality it's in the Z direction. So honestly, this view is kind of rotated 90 degrees. So if we can do a couple things. One is if we come up to this, the block up here, you can see if we hover over it, we get this rotate. We can rotate it around. Then sometimes that will make it a little bit easier to understand if you want. But you just need to make sure you watch that because every once in a while those planes rotate kind of in a funny direction. So now in this case, let's do our dimensions or draw our shape. So again, I want to start at the origin and then I'm going to come down. I'm going to come over. I'm going to come up. So remember, this is the roughed shape of our base plate here. And I've got that. So there's our rough shape. I'm going to add dimensions. So remember, I want to do kind of the big dimensions first. So the big dimensions are this one. That's the 8 dimension. And we had this one, which was another 8 dimensions. So I've got those on there. And I can zoom out. And I'm just using my scroll wheel to get that. Now, in this case, I can put the dimensions on these lines here. So this is really 3. And this one was 3. Now I've got that shape. Now inside of the shape, we had a circle. So I'm going to put that circle in there. So now you can see I've got a bunch of snaps that are coming on here. Now I know that that is in the middle of this side. And it lines up with this front edge. So actually I've got these snaps. I could put this in here and it would completely constrain it to that point just the way I want it. And that is one quick way to do this. But I'm going to do it a little bit different so you guys can see how we can move things around. So now I'm putting this, I've moved my center of the circle so there's no snaps, there's no constraints or anything on here. So I'm going to click and release. And then I'm going to drag this out. Again, I don't want any snaps on here like that. You can see it's snapping to different points there. I don't want those. So I want to make sure there's no snaps or anything like that to add a constraint in here. And then I'm going to click and release. Now I've got my circle. Now I can go and add a dimension. So the dimension of my circle is going to be 3. And I want this circle, the center of this circle, to line up with this line. I want it to be on that line. And that type of constraint, I'm going to hit escape to deselect my dimension. Escape, escape, escape. And so I'm going to align this up. So I'm going to use this coincident constraint. So the coincident constraint will line this up. So we're going to use align and a point. That's what we need here. So in this case, I'm going to select this line. Now you did notice when I hovered over this, there is a midpoint there. Don't select the midpoint. Make sure you got the line selected. So select the line, and then we want this center point of that circle to be on that line. So we're going to highlight the center point of the circle, click on there, and you can see that there is now a relationship and it moves it over. So now if I hit escape, escape, I can click on the circle and I can try to move it around. As you can see, it moves so the center is on that line, but I can't move it side to side because of that constraint. So it can only move up and down. So now at this point, I want to add this dimension in here. So I'm going to put a dimension in from the top part here to the center of the circle. And if I just click on the outside of the circle, it goes to the center of the circle. And really this is a dimension of 2.5, basically in the center of the side of this part right here. So now I've got that shape all defined. And now if we take a look at this, we have the outside and we have the circle. So everything's blue or everything's purple. It is fully defined, fully constrained. We can say finish sketch. It's going to rotate around. I'm going to do a zoom all. So now I've got my part. Now I'm going to go up and do my extrude. Now, if we look in the extrude, we don't see a preview. It didn't pop anything up. And why didn't it do that? Well, we don't have our profile set. And the one reason that we don't have the profile set, and you can kind of tell because that profile, it's kind of not grayed out. It's kind of little different colors on there. So it knows that we know that we need to add something for our profile. But if I hover over my profile here, you can see when I hover here, it kind of highlights this section. Or if I highlight going here, it highlights that center section. It says, Inventor's asking, what section do you want to actually extrude? Well, I don't want to extrude the circle. I want to extrude this other part. So I'm going to click on there, and then it'll say, okay, that's what you want. Does this look right? So now we've got our profile. It shows that we have the profile defined. Output is going to be our solid by default. That's what we're going to want. The distance, in this case, we need to go back and look at our part here, and it is a height of 2. So we can go back. We want to put in a distance of 2 here, and I'm going to hit tab. And in this case, it then will show that, and it's going in the upward direction, and that's what I want. So I'm going to say, okay, now I've got that part. So that's part of it. That's not the whole thing, but it's part of it. Now, if we take a look at this top piece here, it's really coming up, but the shape that I have that has an extrude is kind of in this direction. It's kind of in the side view, but we want this piece to be attached to that bottom piece. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to draw on the back side of this, the side that we can't see here, the left-hand side, and we're going to draw this sketch, and then we're going to extrude it, and it'll be attached to the top. So let's actually do that so you can see this. So first thing we need to do is we need to rotate this around. So I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to push in my button on my roller, and I'm going to rotate this around to this surface right here. That is the surface that I want to draw on. Although I'm not going to draw it here, I'm going to draw it kind of up above, but that's the plane that I want to draw on. So I'm going to click on that, highlight that plane. Then I'm going to go say Start 2D Sketch, and it's going to rotate it around so we can see that. So now I'm going to rotate this a little bit just so we can see it. So you can see I'm on that side right there. So that's the side that I want to be on. So now I've rotated this up. If I click on the left-hand side, it will realign it for me so I don't have to try to get it back by using my shift and roller button. So now I'm going to draw my shape. So now I'm going to go for my line. I'm going to go here. Now this does show a coincident relationship to this geometry. So I'm going to click on there. And I'm going to put here, come there, come down. I want that vertical. And now I want to touch that line. And then I'm going to come back. And now I have that in there. Now I'm going to add a dimension. So I'm going to add this dimension, this height dimension, and that is going to be 6. Here, this dimension is going to be 4. This dimension is going to be 2. Okay. And the overall width of this, so I'm going to go between here and there, is going to be 4. Okay, so now I've got that all defined. Now we do have a circle that we need to put in here. So again, the circle is going to be in the center down here, and kind of aligned up with that. So again, I could use the snaps to get me where I want to be. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so I don't have any snaps there. I'm going to just click and release, try to get our circle so it doesn't have any snaps on it, and then I can put our dimensions in. So in this case, click dimension, diameter of our circle is going to be 2. The distance from the top to the circle is going to be a 3. And the distance from the side here to our circle is also going to be 2. So now we have our part there. So now we've got the whole, everything's defined. We can say OK. Now we can go through here and do extrude, and we are going to do an add. Now if I pull this over here, again, it doesn't give us the profile. The profile is kind of grayed out. It doesn't know which one we want because we've got multiple loops here. So I'm going to say I want this one, and now it's going to show us kind of a preview of that. Now if I take a look at that, it's going the wrong direction. It's not in the right direction. So what we need to do is we need to change that. So over here under direction, click on direction 2. Now we're in the right direction. It's all correct. We can then say OK. We now have our part. We can then spin this around, get it close, and then we can click on this corner, which is our isometric view, zoom all, and there we have our final part.